Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Aero League Racing. My name's Aman, and I will be doing commentary for you here today. Today, for this race weekend, it is round two in our season. We are going towards Brazil, Sao Paulo. Very interesting circuit here, and a very interesting race we've got lined up for you ahead, which will hopefully begin very shortly as we're just waiting for the rest of the drivers to start joining up into the lobby. Once everybody gets in, we will get underway. So until then, get comfy, get yourself something to drink, maybe a nice little snack, and yeah, we'll get started very soon. Okay, we have I think a few more minutes before the rest of the drivers join up and we begin this session. So before everything else gets started, obviously this is round two into the season, and let's review the last race, which is also the first race of the season, and the standings so far. So after everyone's finishes and the tier and the stewards results, we have Groen in the Ferrari sitting in P1 in the championship. MBMA, who had a wonderful qualifying session last race, but unfortunately could not capitalize and translate that into a win, sits in P2. Benny in the AlphaTauri sits in P3. Owen in P4. Ross P5, followed by Reaper, Pointers, Jay O'Leary, Major, and Admo, and that would round off your top 10 in the driver standings. Looking at the constructor standings, Ferrari sitting at 26 points, followed right closely behind by the Williams with 24. Haas in third place with 18, AlphaTauri with 15, and McLaren with 13. We for the bottom five we have Red Bull Racing, Aston Martin, Mercedes AMG, Alpine, and Alfa Romeo respectively. So already we are beginning to see, championship standings starting to form up, but obviously as we saw, so much can happen in one race, let alone an entire season. So I think there's supposed to be a lot of things that we can look forward to, not only in this race, but also in the coming season going forward. That being said, I think there's only a few more minutes left before the rest of the drivers join up and we can get this race underway. Um, yeah, we don't really have much more to talk about. Brazil, I guess we could talk about the circuit as well. Very fun track here, a personal favorite of mine as well. Brazil being one of those races where finding the balance between good downforce and good top speed is the most important factor that you could have in this race. Obviously, the track this time around is actually a lot more slipperier than most people anticipate it to be. Obviously, turn one and two and three being those that fast left and right hander at the start of the race. It's very easy to lose the car there, especially if you're a bit too trigger happy and you go down on the throttle a bit too quickly. As a result, drivers should be a bit more careful. In the weather aspect, I'm sure we'll get some sort of update from one of the drivers in the chat soon. Brazil also being renowned for having rain around here as well, so let's not be surprised if we see a full wet qualifying or race. But that's really all there is to really say about this track. Tons of overtaking spots, obviously going down into turn 1 after the pit straight, following which we'll have the second DRS zone as well, which will also open up tons of prime opportunities, which is the main aspect. And the beauty about Brazil is the fact that there are so many places where you can make an overtake and try to get past your opponent. But let's see what drivers can capitalize. Let's see what drivers have found the right setup for this track. And hopefully we should be in store for a wonderful and very, very entertaining race here today. Hello, Saeed. How are you doing? How is your tier racing coming along? I hope everything's fantastic at your end. Ooh, I apologize for the audio in the background. I was just making sure if my mic was audible or not. I think we're only waiting on one more driver, and then we should be getting underway soon. Apologies for the delay as well. Right, and with the go-ahead from Ross, who is the lobby leader, every one of the drivers now seemingly getting ready, and we are all set to go here at Brazil as well as the mighty Chump can ready up for us. I think we should be all getting underway. Otherwise, doing okay. Saeed says doing okay. Imola is great as always. But Brazil not really got caught up in lap 1 incident and suffered understeered for my first stint. It's very unfortunate to hear, Saeed. I hope the rest of your race could have translated well, and if not, then well, don't worry. There's always the whole rest of the season to go. Just one mishap shouldn't hinder you from having a fantastic season, and I'm sure you'll bounce back with an even stronger result in the next race weekend. Think we're going to be seeing a lot of lawnmowers out here today, as well, with how many people would most likely be going onto the grass. And ladies and gentlemen, as I was saying before in the pre-game lobby, we should not be surprised for a full wet race, and here we have it. A full wet qualifying by the looks of it. We'll see what tires are the best ones to go on, whether the inters or the intermediates would be the wiser of the choice. Maybe the track would start drying up around halfway point. We'll have to see. As of now, no driver seemingly going out at first. Obviously making small few adjustments according to the weather at the moment. But as we can see in the distance there, I believe that is the Alpine garage, which is now letting a driver... Oh, an AlphaTauri actually letting one of their drivers out. So we can find him. I believe that might be Benny. If not Benny, then it might be the mighty Chump who it is. So, mighty Chump in the AlphaTauri coming out of the pits first. Obviously, track is at its wettest, and obviously it is the most unstable at the moment. Obviously, drivers not setting any rubber down or not dispersing any of the water beforehand. So we'll have to see how this comes along. It goes very wide, maybe underestimating how much grip he has and how cold his tires will be. So we can see the McLaren of, I believe that is Owen behind him, and the Ferrari of CRF have also all gone out to begin their laps as well. Hello, Italiano. Is my brother alive? No. My brother seemingly came home after he had his exam today and knocked out the entire day. He's been asleep for a good portion of it. I'm actually very surprised he isn't up by now. We got him some food as well, but he's not waking up for that, so Yeah, I guess he's really out of it. But going back to the race as well, oh, going very, very wide there, maybe losing the car a little bit. Mighty comes across the line to begin his first time lap here at Brazil. Coming to turn one early on the brakes, obviously does not want to overshoot the corner in these wet conditions, goes a bit wide, which will not help him into the second run, goes very, very wide and off the track, as a matter of fact. Maybe because of the lack of grip, does not manage to invalidate it. It was probably going a lot slower than people was anticipated. Coming towards this fast left-hander, let's see if he's willing. He's going to go wide again over here. Obviously, these camera angles are great, but it's not fantastic for seeing where the driver's on the track. We have to ride on board with this sort of a camera point of view. Goes very wide, very gentle on the throttle as well, knowing that it's so easy to slip the car up. Has his teammate right behind him, would not want to costly spin out and damage his front wing, so he'll have to be a bit careful. Not the fastest time from Mighty Chump, but then again, that is to be expected. Anyone on inters? Let's take a look, actually. No, not that. Tires. Nope, everyone's seemingly out on the wets as Mighty goes very, very off track. Will probably not be setting any fast or rapid times at the moment. Trying very difficult to keep his car steady as he comes across the line and sets a 1:22.9. Owen obviously right behind him on his time lap. Comes across the line and sets a 1:21.3. And CRF of the Ferrari, let's see what time he can set up on the board as well. Coming across the line, will he be able to beat both drivers? And he sets a 1:22.2. So far, Owen in the McLaren being the fastest car at the moment, setting a 1:21.3. Arctic Squirrel as well on his fast outlap at the moment. I believe there might be a few more drivers who are out. FX and Parker might being one of them. Actually beginning his time lap as well, as we see Reaper setting a 1:22.9. Let's find someone on board we can sit on board with. So actually, let's actually go right on board with MBMA, who, well, he's currently on his outlap. Groen seems to be on a time lap right now, so let's ride on board with him. Obviously, you're currently your last race winner. We'll be very much looking forward to keeping his form up and setting a blistering lap time. Comes across the line, sets a 1:21.5, so not exactly pole position, but only 0.2 off, which is a fantastic time for him. Looking down a bit more if we can find somebody else who's on a very, very fast lap time. Luke comes across the line. Owen actually managing to improve and setting a 1:21.0. So this is the interesting thing about this. Being disqualified for blocking pit exit, title contender. Yeah, absolutely. This was that's a pretty costly mistake on his end. He must have spun out or something and then couldn't be able to move his car. But yes, this is something interesting as well. Usually drivers in the dry conditions would have to come back into the pits and then restart their whole lap and everything, but not this time around. Jay O'Leary actually managing to set a 1:22.5 as well. So as we can see, time laps are coming down at the moment. But the interesting thing about wet tire conditions is that the more laps you set on them, the faster tire times you'll actually be setting. So it's not like your dry conditions where it's a one run and then the tires are too dead to continue. With your wet tires, especially like intermediates or wets, you can continuously set lap after lap after lap, and that'll allow you to usually set faster and faster lap times, obviously with the track dry line forming as well. CFR still on a 1:20.7. We'll go down and see some drivers who haven't set their lap times yet. Abmo crosses the line with a 1:24.4, not bad. And Ross with an invalidated lap time. He will most definitely be looking to improve. Owen, meanwhile, a lot slower on this time around, so no point trying to spectate him. Groen, I believe, is also on a fast lap at the moment. CRF sets a 1:20.2, taking provisional pole position. Almost 0.8 faster than Owen as well. The Ferraris really seem to be set to make a statement here today. The thing that's obviously very difficult to see as well. As we can see, one of the Red Bulls now beginning their time lap as well. Not having the best of starts in the last race for both the Red Bull drivers, obviously being involved in incidents of their own, slipping up and making costly mistakes, which very much costed them some nice points. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back as well. We could ride on board with Major, who is currently on his time lap 2/10 faster than his previous lap time as well. So he's definitely looking to improve here. As we can see, one of the McLarens about to cross the line. I believe that might be Owen. Let's see what time he can set. Nothing doing yet. No major improvements at the moment. I'm sure that will be changing. There's a big train over here. I'm not too sure how much of this might be hindering Major's lap time as well, being stuck behind an Aston Martin. Obviously, it wouldn't be ideal for the dirty air situation as he's coming through the tight, twisty sections of this track. Final turn, well, the actual final turn. There is a completely flat-out turn going up ahead, but we don't really call those turns in my book, or they shouldn't be called turns. I don't see them as. You can say sticking towards the left-hand side to minimize the time. Still goes very, very wide towards the right. I would stick as left as possible. Only sets a 1:22.1, so not a major improvement from his end either. Ross, meanwhile, on the other hand, also looking to improve his lap times after he invalidated one of his laps. Does not want to be wasting his tires. 4/10 slower than his current lap time. Might be taking this lap as a slow banker instead. MBMA, a person who was very, very much quicker in qualifying last time out when we were here at Imola. It'll be interesting to see how fast he is. Was that just a one-trick wonder, or does MBMA have some extra bit of magic this season to be fighting at the top for the championship? Let's see. Oh, car gets very, very squarely there through the exit. Almost seeming like his tires had no grip. Maybe he just went a bit too quickly onto the throttle to maximize his lap times. Sticking towards the left-hand side now. Goes very, very wide. Is that going to be an invalidation? No, it isn't. Crosses the line. He sets a 1:23.1, which will obviously not be his best time yet. He will definitely be looking to improve on that in the coming lap. Probably going for it straight after this one. I believe that might be the Aston Martin of Mighty Chump, who's also going out for another run, but we will stay on board with MBMA to see if he improves any sort. No purple sectors in the first sector at least. Oh, and he spuns out. MBMA has spun out and lost his car, going headfirst into the barrier. Probably damaged his front wing there, which is exactly not what he would have wanted. That is very, very unfortunate for him. He's clearly struggling in these conditions, not able to find the traction that he would want. So I wish we would change this camera angle a little bit so that we can view some other things instead. There we go. Ross, meanwhile, also looking to improve, currently sitting P7 at the moment. Provisional pole still in the hands of CRF with a 1:20.2. FX and Parker actually on a 1:20.4. Sitting in P2 right behind him, only 2/10. Meanwhile, Owen very, very far back, 8/10 currently behind pole position. Crosses the line, Ross, he sets a 1:21.6, so it doesn't improve. Well, he does improve on his lap time, however, he doesn't move up or down the grid. Owen in P3 at the moment, looking to improve as well. Comes across the line, sets a 1:21.0. 2/10 faster than his previous lap time, but still nothing doing to come back and fight CRF for pole position at the moment. FX and Parker with his lap time invalidated. Let's go on board with Luke in the Alfa Romeo, a car that we did not see much of at Imola. Comes across the line with a 1:21.5. No major improvement there. Pointer is obviously on a very slow lap. Let's ride on board with Reaper, who actually was 6/10 faster in his last lap, still currently sitting in P6. Both the Haas drivers are actually having a lot more success than last season as well. Let's ride on board with Reaper for this one. Now Reaper going through sector 2. This is obviously the tight, twisty section, as we can see in the bottom right-hand side, which shows the whole map display. Drivers will be looking to be making as much time here as possible. Obviously, rainy conditions are definitely not helping them. I do still want to see if there is going to be any rain. If anybody knows that, like Rigo, if you have any information regarding if there's going to be rain for the race, please do let me know as well. Right, Reaper coming across in my books, the final turn here at Brazil before the straight begins. Definitely has been improving on his time so far. He'll be looking to be improving a little bit more as well. Hopefully trying to fight a bit higher up for the lead. Sets the time of a 1:21.3. Stays in P6 after dropping down to P7 momentarily. The Ferrari of Groen, obviously now him also looking forward to pushing and making a new, setting more laps. Oh, lets a few drivers through actually. Does not seem to be on any fast laps at the moment. Stay on board with Tiji, who's also seemingly going a lot slower this lap. Yep. Arctic Squirrel, currently 2/10 faster, sitting in P16 unfortunately. Wet race confirmed. That's very unfortunate. Also, hello Benny. Sorry to hear about your incident. You want to give us any context as to what happened there? Obviously, you would want to be qualifying as high up in the grid as possible, but this is the situation at hand, then there's nothing more you can do. Isn't lighting the timing sheets on fire, Arctic Squirrel. However, you can tell he's definitely going to be improving this time around, with the Haas very closely behind him as well. I'm not too sure whose Haas that is, but it darts straight into the pits, so no hindrance there. Comes across the line, sets a 1:23.4 and moves himself up into P13. Luke sets a 1:21.5. Meanwhile, Groen actually comes across the line and sets, a very slow that time. So as we can see, a lot of the drivers actually having set a lot more laps on these tires than they would have, than you'd expect, obviously, considering the fact that these tires will be lasting a lot longer. Pointers setting a 1:20.5, going into P3 as well. Fantastic lap from him. He'll be looking to improve this time around as well, unless this is a slow time lap, which by the looks of it, it is. FX and Parker obviously invalidating his previous lap times as well. We'll be wanting to move forward, as we can see Reaper actually being the first car to be opting to go onto the inters. Very interesting move there, maybe feeling the track has dried up enough to improve. Meanwhile, FX and Parker only a tenth behind his current time. Benny says, lost it on the exit of turn 3 and game disqualified me before I could get a chance to move away. We'll be happy to get points from the back, of course. I mean, if it's a full race, and you can expect definitely a lot of incidents, so let's hope you have a good strategy lined up, but that's very unfortunate as we see FX and Parker once again invalidating his lap time, which will be a very frustrating moment for him as well. Owen and CRF both in the top 5 on their current outlaps as well. I still want to keep an eye on Reaper with his inters. Maybe he has figured something out that the rest of the grid hasn't as of yet. We'll see what he can do. As CRF comes across the line to start one of his final few time laps. I believe it will be probably one of 2 final time laps. Going down into turn 1, keeping it very nice and steady, sticking it very close for turn 2 as well. Seems to be making no incidents over here. Provisional pole currently 2/10 above P2 at the moment. He's still 2/10 down on his lap time, as a matter of fact. Meanwhile, we'll ride on board with Owen and see how fast he's going as well, comparing both drivers' times as he comes across and is 2/10 faster on his lap time as well. Owen obviously has to find a lot of time, roughly 6/10 if he's looking to catch up with CRF and move himself up into the grid for pole position. Ross retires from the session. I believe that was an accident as well. He must have spun out and destroyed his car. FX and Parker also opting to go onto the inters. So maybe these inter runners actually seeing something. Oh, never mind. FX and Parker retires, I believe, in the pits. Owen also retires in the middle of the track. These drivers are clearly struggling in these conditions, so maybe, just maybe, it might be time for inters. CRF, regardless, currently sitting on provisional pole, crosses the line. Will he improve? Sets a 120. No improvement from his end. Meanwhile, we can ride on board with Pointers, who will be setting a... Comes across the line, sets a 120.5. Goes a lot quicker than his last time. Luke currently cutting grass. J. O'Leary, meanwhile, beginning one of his final few runs as well. Reaper, unfortunately, also DNFing. So both the inter runners unable to keep their car steady, and they end up losing it. He retired in the pits, not enough time. That's very unfortunate. Alright, let's ride on board with a few more drivers. We see one of the Mercedes, I believe, of Noof Squid. He has a purple sector 2, comes across the line, sets a 123.3. Nothing doing there. Obviously, qualifying time is now over, so this will be the final run of all these drivers. Let's take a look. With the Aston Martin of Arctic, his race is over as well. I believe there's a Ferrari right behind him. That might be growing. Currently 0.3 faster. Comes across the line, sets a 120.2. So setting actually a Ferrari 1-2 at the moment. Fantastic lap time from Groen as well. So the Ferrari is definitely looking to be making a statement here today. J. O'Leary going to be the first of the Red Bulls to come across the line. Let's see what he can set. Not much faster than his previous lap time, but we shall see. Comes across the line, sets a 121.0, followed by Major, who will come across the line and set a 121.1. MBMA, the driver who we were all looking at to see make a statement this race, currently hasn't really been anywhere near the top 5. However, that could change with this final lap. No, it will not. He is darting right into the pits. Let's see if Mighty Chump. That's a very depressing image. The AlphaTauri just stranded into the wall and disqualified now for parking at a dangerous location. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the qualifying session here at Brazil is now over. We have a Ferrari 1-2 with CRF managing to secure pole position on the wet tire compound. Groen, meanwhile, on the other hand, also his teammate setting a 120.2. Very, very close times to his Ferrari partner, but sits in P2 at the moment. FX and Parker in the Alpine, going to be sitting in P3. After what happened to him in Imola with all the incidents he was involved in, he's looking to make a much bigger improvement this time as well. As I believe we were just waiting for Pointers to now enter the pits. I never got to run on inters, says Parker. Yeah, but I think I believe Reaper was also running on the inters and he was struggling as well. I believe he ended up retiring on track. So whether or not it was the right tire choice or not is something to be worried about after the race. Now we have the race coming right up. And there it is. CRF, your Ferrari driver, has secured pole position here at Brazil, followed by Groen in P2 with a 120.2. FX and Parker in the Alpine setting a 120.4. And the rest of the grid, we have the Williams of Pointers, Owen in the McLaren, O'Leary in the Red Bull, Abmo in the McLaren, MBMA in the Williams, Luke with the Alfa Romeo, and Major with the Red Bull, followed by Ross and Reaper as well in the Haas's. We have a very interesting race lined up now. We'll see if there's going to be any battling going on between teammates, any team orders being thrown around or not. And before this race gets underway, as it is customary, let us know what will be your prediction for how many safety cars we're expecting this race. I was expecting at least 2 for Imola, but we got 0 surprisingly. So, you know what? I'm gonna give it to this tier. I'm gonna say there are gonna be 0 safety cars this race. Watch there be 8, and we'll be here for 2 hours. Right, 7 seconds left to go until the race starts, and as we can see, it is absolutely pouring here in Brazil. CRF begins on pole position, will be leading the formation lap, and be leading the drivers across the grid. It'll be interesting to see what tire strategies everyone has opted for. It looks to be full wets at the moment, as we can take a look at their tire choices. So every single driver on the grid opting to use the wet tire compound, obviously feeling that maybe there is just not enough grip for the intermediates. It will be interesting to see if the weather transitions into being a bit more dry, and if some drivers choose to put on the intermediate tire compounds, maybe to opt for a different strategy to bring themselves up the grid, or in CRF's and Groen's case, to maybe secure the positions that they have. We saw the tire strategy pop up for a few seconds before, but then it just completely disappeared. I'm guessing it's only going to go about halfway through the race, so lap 18 roughly. Maybe a bit less for the wets. It's always so difficult finding the perfect setup for both a wet and dry race. Obviously, you know, if we had a prediction, if we had an idea of what kind of race it would be from beforehand, drivers would prepare accordingly like they do in real life. However, in the video game, there's no obvious way to tell, but that is where the skill play does come into it. The drivers who obviously can adapt to the weather the quickest are obviously one of the better drivers, of course. So it definitely sets the skill apart, or sets the drivers apart from each other. CRF now slowly approaching towards the line. Quite a gap being formed, as a matter of fact. The AlphaTauri and all the way in the back of Benny now finally crossing over Sector 2, finishing off Sector 2. So the Ferrari's going to have to wait there for quite a bit. Obviously not ideal, would want his tires to be a bit warmer at the start, but let's see what happens here. Both Ferraris lined up as we wait for the rest of the grid to also form up. And as all the drivers now begin to line up, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, at the Brazilian Grand Prix. I can't hear the lights. It's 5 red lights and drive-through penalty for FX and Parker. It's lights out and away we go here. FX and Parker manages to get the jump because he jumped the start. Meanwhile, Groen, actually starting in P2, manages to jump his teammate CRF and gets into pole position. It gets into P1, banging wheels with FX and Parker, which will not be ideal as FX and Parker completely cuts across the track to maintain the big lead. Not too sure what's going on there. CRF, meanwhile, on the other hand, drops down into P3, would not be happy about the start and would be absolutely furious about this Alpine that is now currently in his way. We can see a bunch of yellow flags in the background as well. No cars have gone off as yet, so there does not seem to be too much damage. Owen and Abmo currently sitting P4 and P5 respectively in the McLarens. CRF, meanwhile, obviously not happy, as we can see Owen making the move dive down the inside on CRF, moving himself up into P3 at the moment. CRF will not be happy with the start, dropping down from P1 all the way down to P4 or a net P3 after FX and Parker will have to definitely come in and serve his penalty of a drive-through. Or it might be a stop and go, I'm not entirely too sure. Very clean start so far, no big collisions so far. Obviously the big jump start by FX and Parker, not too sure what happened there. Obviously it's very easy, or it's a very, very stressful moment. Maybe he just accidentally let his finger slip off the clutch. And now we can see the trains that are now beginning to form as Groen sets the fastest lap time of the race, obviously it being the first lap of the race with a 1:30.2. Some fighting as well going at the back, but we can see Luke right behind Abmo, trying to move himself up. The Alfa Romeo obviously nowhere to be seen at Imola, but trying to make a statement here at Brazil. It's never too late. As we can see, the Williams of MBMA managing to come into the pits, probably because of some wing damage. For a title contender, that is not ideal at all. We can see Benny, who started dead last, move up into P12 as well.
Actually going up into the grid, we can see Groen fighting with FX and Parker, who, despite his penalty, will not be holding up. Bangs wheel once again with the Ferrari. I'm sure the Ferrari definitely has a few words to say about that after the race. FX and Parker, meanwhile, makes the dive down the inside and gets into P1. The Ferrari obviously not letting that go, but this letting Owen catch up to them as well. Seeing as how the Ferrari is now being held up, maybe he sees an opportunity for himself to make a move. I don't understand why it says 120, they're a minute behind, but that is not the case, as we can see the Ferrari right there in the background. FX and Parker setting the fastest lap of the race with a 1:22.9 as well. See O'Leary trying to make a move on the Williams of Pointers as well. And we can see Ross and Reaper as well sandwiched between both the Red Bulls. Let's see what sort of team orders can come up over here. Maybe if Reaper feels he's quicker, will he ask Ross to get out of the way, or will Ross just decide to keep going with the pace that he has? Going down a bit rest of the grid, we can see Benny very in the AlphaTauri, very close behind on the Red Bull, the sister team of the Red Bull Racing. Maybe trying to make a possible move, goes down the inside of Major and makes that move stick brilliantly. That has to be one of the better overtakes so far. Great racing by both drivers to keep it clean. And as we move back up the grid, we can see Owen trying to get very closely behind the Ferrari of Groen. Meanwhile, CRF, who dropped down from P1 into P4, will be definitely trying to make his moves back up the field. Very closely behind, as we can see the McLaren of Owen goes very off the track. Probably lost a lot of grip there and just could not keep himself steady. Ends up going onto the grass and dropping down a position to CRF. As we can see, FX and Parker now finally come into the pits to serve his drive-through penalty, as well as he gets a 5-second speeding time penalty as well for speeding in the pit lane. Luke, meanwhile, sets the fastest time of the race. We see Reaper keeping a 1.5 gap to Ross as well. And Parker coming out of the pit lanes as well, crosses the white line as well. Not too sure what's going on there. Maybe someone would need to have a chat with him and remind him about a few of the rules that we have in place for this session. And after the commotion and all the chaos that we had at the start of this race, we now have both the Ferraris sitting in P1 and P2, followed by both the McLarens in P3 and P4, and obviously the Alfa Romeo sitting in the P5 position. Quite an interesting lineup we have going now. And as drivers are beginning to separate themselves from each other, we can see that Luke has been able to stay within the gap of Admo for a good decent chunk of this part, and has been constantly about roughly 0.5 tenths. Ooh, and as I say that, maybe it might be the commentator's curse, he loses the car a little bit. I apologize, Luke. Did not mean to jinx you there. Going down the grid a bit, we have O'Leary only 0.5 seconds behind Pointers. We can see the Aston Martin of Arctic Squirrel also into the pits as well. Meanwhile, O'Leary and Ross both in contention for P6 at the moment. And here we go with a predicted pit stop strategy. As we can see, lap 19 is the expected pit window. But obviously that is just the simulated guess of when drivers will roughly be pitting. It'll be interesting to see what time they actually go for, if anyone's looking for an undercut or not. As the Mighty Chump, no, not the Mighty Chump, is that MBMA who spun out? It is MBMA who spun out, and we have a full safety car here. And there we have it, the first safety car of the season